The bank manager laughed loudly as she pushed the man's loan papers off the counter and let them fall to the floor. "Men who dress like you don't qualify for six figures," she said, loud enough for every customer in the lobby to hear. A 12-year-old boy standing beside the man lowered his head, his cheeks burning with shame. Nearby, a security guard's radio crackled, and heads turned as two officers began walking toward the counter. The manager smiled, proud of herself, and pointed toward the door. "Please, before we continue, please hit the subscribe button, like, and drop your thought on the comment section." Escort him out. The man did not raise his voice. He did not argue. He did not even flinch. He simply reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded envelope, sliding it slowly across the counter, his eyes never leaving hers. "You still have one chance to read this before you ruin your career," he said calmly, his voice so steady it almost sounded strange in a room full of tension. The manager laughed again, snatched the envelope from his hand without even glancing at it, and tossed it straight into the trash can beside her desk. Papers crumpled. A customer near the door gasped softly. The boy squeezed his father's hand so tightly his small knuckles turned pale. 10 seconds later, the front doors of the bank swung open, and every head in the lobby turned. A tall man in a gray suit walked in, moving fast, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the marble floor. His eyes moved from the father being pulled toward the exit, to the frightened boy beside him, to the unopened envelope sitting crumpled in the trash. His face went white. He stopped walking entirely, as if the floor beneath him had suddenly disappeared. "Mr. Carter?" he whispered, barely able to push the words out of his throat. The entire lobby fell silent. Phones that had been filming for entertainment slowly lowered. Nobody in that room understood yet just how badly the last 5 minutes were about to cost them, or how quickly everything they thought they knew about the quiet man in work boots was about to fall apart. To understand what happened inside that bank, you first need to understand who Marcus Carter really was, because almost nobody in that lobby had the slightest idea. Marcus was 44 years old, a widower, and a father who had built his whole life around one boy. 10 years earlier, cancer had taken his wife, quietly and cruelly, leaving Marcus alone with a 2-year-old son and a grief he never fully let go of. Since that day he had raised Noah with nothing but patience and quiet strength, working late nights, missing sleep, and never once complaining about any of it. What almost nobody knew, not the neighbors, not the cashiers at the grocery store, not even most of his own employees, was that Marcus was not just another working man struggling to pay his bills. He was the owner of Carter Infrastructure Holdings, a construction company worth more than $1 billion, with cranes rising over 3 different states and thousands of families depending on the paychecks his company issued every week. But Marcus never acted like a billionaire, not for one single day of his life. He drove a dusty old pickup truck with a cracked windshield and a check engine light that had been on for years. He wore the same scuffed work boots every single day, the leather cracked and worn soft from use. He personally visited his own construction sites, shook hands with the men pouring concrete under the hot sun, and remembered their children's names. He believed, all the way down to his bones, that real leadership started with humility, not with expensive suits or corner offices. Only a small circle of people on this earth knew who Marcus Carter truly was. Everyone else just saw a tired-looking man in worn clothes, and that was exactly how he liked it. It made people honest with him. It let him see the world the way it really treated people who had nothing, instead of the polished version they showed to men in suits. He had no idea that today, that same disguise was about to be tested in front of his own son. That Saturday, Marcus had made Noah a promise, the kind of promise a father makes when he wants a day to feel special. First, they would stop by the bank so Marcus could finish some important business. Then they would go buy Noah his very first laptop for school, something Noah had been quietly hoping for since the start of the year. And after that, they would sit together in the stands and watch a baseball game, just the two of them, sharing a bag of peanuts the way they did every few weekends since Noah's mother passed away. Noah had woken up early that morning, more excited than usual, already imagining the laptop box waiting for him and the sound of the crowd cheering later that night. The bank stop was not some small errand tucked between the fun parts of the day. Marcus was there to personally fund a $15 million affordable housing project, built for struggling veterans and single parents who needed a real chance at a better life, the kind of chance nobody had ever given him and his own family back when they had nothing. He could have sent a lawyer or an assistant to handle the paperwork in 5 quiet minutes without ever leaving his office. Instead, he brought his son because he wanted Noah to understand, with his own eyes, what it looked like when a person used money to lift other people up instead of just keeping it locked away for himself. It was supposed to be a short, simple stop before the real fun of the day began. Neither of them had any idea what was waiting for them inside that building, or how far it would push both of them before the day was through. The branch had recently hired a new manager named Vanessa Reed. Vanessa believed, with her whole heart, that a person's worth could be measured by the price tag on their clothes. Expensive suits meant success. Cheap clothes meant failure. That was the entire way she saw the world, and nothing anyone said could change her mind. The moment Marcus pulled his old pickup truck into the parking lot, Vanessa was already watching through the front window, arms crossed, judgment written all over her face. She took one look at the dust on his truck and the boots on his feet and decided, without asking a single question, exactly who he was. In her mind, he was just another poor man walking in to beg for money he didn't deserve. She had no idea that the truck outside was worth less than the buttons on the suit she was wearing, and that the man stepping out of it could have bought her entire bank without blinking. Inside, Marcus walked calmly to the counter, Noah trailing close behind him, and politely asked if he could speak with someone in private about transferring $15 million into a new community development account. For one full second, the lobby went completely quiet, as if the entire room were holding its breath. Then Vanessa burst out laughing, the kind of loud, sharp laugh meant to be heard by everyone around her. "So now construction workers think they're developers?" she said, loud enough that heads turned from every corner of the bank. A few customers chuckled along with her, glancing over their shoulders at the man in the dusty work boots. Others simply stared, unsure whether to laugh or look away. Noah's small hand tightened around his father's fingers, his eyes darting nervously around the room as strangers began whispering and pointing in their direction. His face flushed red, and he suddenly wished he could disappear into the floor. Marcus did not raise his voice. He did not defend himself. He simply stood there, steady as stone, calm on the outside even as his son's grip grew tighter and tighter with every passing second beside him. Marcus reached into his bag and calmly laid out everything he had brought. His identification. His existing account records. Official investment documents. And a formal letter from the bank's own headquarters confirming today's meeting. Vanessa did not look at a single page. She didn't even glance down. "People like you waste everyone's time," she said flatly, sliding the papers back across the counter without so much as touching them. A young banker sitting nearby named Olivia Brooks quietly stood up and offered to review the documents herself. Vanessa spun around and humiliated her in front of the entire lobby, ordering her back to her desk in a tone sharp enough to make Olivia's face turn red. Marcus watched all of it happen, memorizing every second, while Noah stood frozen beside him, watching his father get treated like a criminal for the crime of wearing the wrong clothes. Then Vanessa did something even Marcus did not expect. She accused him, right there in front of everyone, of attempting bank fraud. Her voice rang out across the lobby, sharp and confident, as if she were performing for an audience. She picked up the phone and called security without a second of hesitation. Several customers pulled out their phones and started filming, sensing that something dramatic was about to happen, the way strangers always do when trouble starts brewing in a public place. One woman near the door leaned toward her friend and whispered just loud enough for Noah to hear, "He's probably trying to scam the bank." Noah heard every single word. His small shoulders sank lower, and his eyes filled with a kind of shame no 12-year-old should ever have to feel in public. Marcus felt his son's hand begin to tremble in his own, and for the first time since they had walked through those doors, he saw the confidence drain completely out of his boy's face, replaced by something closer to fear. That was the moment something inside Marcus went very still and very quiet, the calm of a man who had decided, silently, that enough was enough. Without raising his voice even once, Marcus reached into his coat and pulled out one final envelope, the last card he had left to play. Inside was a confidential letter from the bank's board of directors, personally confirming today's $15 million meeting with Marcus Carter. He slid it across the counter toward Vanessa. "You should read this," he said. Vanessa didn't even pick it up. She grabbed it, glanced at it with pure disgust, and dropped it straight into the trash can beside her without opening it. Then she turned to the two security guards who had just arrived and pointed at Marcus. "Get him out of my bank," she said. And as the guards stepped forward to grab his arm, nobody in that lobby noticed the front doors quietly beginning to open behind them. Richard Collins, the founder and owner of Fairview Community Bank, walked through those doors at exactly that moment, dressed in a sharp gray suit and carrying a leather folder under his arm. He had personally driven across town that morning to finalize the biggest partnership his bank had ever signed. The instant his eyes landed on Marcus, his stomach dropped. He watched security gripping the arm of the very man he had come to meet. He watched a young boy standing frozen near tears. And then his eyes drifted down to the trash can beside the counter, where a torn envelope with his own bank's official seal sat crumpled among the garbage. Richard Collins stopped walking completely, and for one terrifying second he could not make his legs move at all. "Mr. Carter, what happened here?" Richard's voice cracked as he rushed forward, pushing past the stunned security guards. The entire lobby fell into dead silence. Every phone that had been filming Marcus now turned toward Richard instead. Vanessa, still not understanding the size of the mistake she had just made, straightened her shoulders with pride and began explaining how she had bravely stopped an obvious fraud attempt before it could happen. Richard didn't respond to her right away. He bent down, reached into the trash can, and slowly pulled out the crumpled envelope with shaking hands. He opened it. He read the single page inside. And as the color drained completely from his face, everyone in that lobby understood that something enormous had just gone terribly, terribly wrong. Richard turned to face the crowd, his voice trembling but clear enough for every single person to hear. Marcus Carter was not a customer applying for a loan. He was the billionaire founder of Carter Infrastructure Holdings, one of the largest construction companies in the entire country. Today's meeting had never been about a loan at all. It was about a $15 million partnership that would fund affordable housing projects for veterans and single parents across the whole state. The board of directors had personally and unanimously approved Marcus Carter as the bank's newest strategic partner, weeks before he had ever walked through those doors. A wave of gasps rolled through the lobby. Every single person who had laughed, whispered, or filmed just moments earlier suddenly understood, with sickening clarity, that Vanessa had never opened a single document Marcus had placed in front of her. Vanessa's confident smile cracked instantly. She stammered, insisting that Marcus should have dressed the part if he wanted to be taken seriously, that it wasn't her fault he looked the way he looked. Marcus finally turned to face her directly, his voice quiet but sharp enough to cut through the entire room. "So Respect has a dress code?" he asked. Nobody answered him. Nobody could. Customers who had been holding up their phones slowly lowered them, unable to meet his eyes. Some stared at the floor, ashamed of the laughter they had joined in with just minutes earlier. Vanessa opened her mouth to argue further, but for the first time since Marcus had walked in, she had absolutely nothing left to say. Richard Collins wasted no time. Right there, in front of the entire lobby, he stripped Vanessa of her manager credentials and suspended her on the spot, pending a full investigation. He ordered every camera in the branch pulled and reviewed. He asked Olivia, the young banker who had tried to help earlier, to stay behind, telling her personally that her instincts that day had been correct. The security guards, embarrassed and apologetic, confirmed to Richard that Marcus had done absolutely nothing wrong from the moment he walked through the door. Vanessa was escorted to the back office, her face pale, her career unraveling in real time in front of the very customers she had once looked down on. What the investigation uncovered over the following days was far worse than anyone expected. Vanessa had not simply made one terrible mistake with Marcus. Records pulled from years of internal files showed a disturbing pattern stretching back long before she had ever laid eyes on him. She had denied basic services to minority customers again and again, sometimes for reasons noted in the system as nothing more than concern. She had deliberately delayed low-income clients while rushing wealthier customers ahead of them in line, day after day, without a single person above her ever asking why. She had closed several legitimate accounts without any real reason at all, and had humiliated elderly customers who couldn't keep up with her rushed, impatient demands, some of them leaving the bank in tears. Complaint after complaint had been filed against her over the years by employees and customers alike, and every single one had been quietly buried, dismissed, or simply lost in a drawer somewhere. Marcus's case was simply the first time someone had walked in with enough power and enough proof to make sure the truth could no longer be hidden or ignored. That night, back at home, Noah sat across from his father at the kitchen table, quiet for a long time before finally speaking. "Dad," he said softly, "if you weren't rich, would anyone have believed you?" Marcus opened his mouth to answer, but no words came out. He sat there in silence, staring at his son because he honestly did not know how to answer a question that honest. That single sentence, spoken by a 12-year-old boy, hit him harder than anything Vanessa had said or done that entire day, and it stayed with him long after Noah had gone to bed. In the days that followed, the bank offered Marcus millions of dollars in compensation for what had happened, desperate to make the entire embarrassing situation disappear quietly and quickly. Lawyers called. Executives sent apology letters. A courier even arrived at his office with a check large enough to make most people's eyes widen. Marcus refused every single dollar without hesitation. Money had never been the point, and it never would be. Instead, he sat down with the board and demanded something far more valuable than any check could ever be. He required mandatory anti-bias training for every employee at every branch across the entire company, no exceptions. He demanded independent customer advocates be placed inside the bank, along with an anonymous reporting system so employees could safely report unfair treatment without fear of losing their jobs the way Olivia nearly had. He insisted on posted customer rights in every branch lobby, community financial education programs for families who had never been taught how banks really worked, scholarships for the children of construction workers and single parents just like his own son, and yearly discrimination audits with real, enforceable consequences attached. The board argued for weeks, pushing back on the cost and the scale of it all, but in the end, with Marcus calmly threatening to walk away from the entire $15 million partnership, they reluctantly agreed to every single condition, one by one. Vanessa Reed lost her job permanently. She lost her banking license entirely, and multiple discrimination lawsuits were filed against her in the months that followed, each one built on the pattern the investigation had uncovered. Olivia Brooks, the young banker who had tried to do the right thing when nobody else would, was promoted to branch manager. Every security officer at every branch received new training, specifically teaching them how to challenge unfair or improper orders instead of blindly following them, no matter who was giving the command. 6 months later, Marcus and Noah walked back through the doors of that same branch. Marcus still drove the same dusty pickup truck. He still wore the same scuffed work boots. He still dressed exactly the way he always had, because that had never been the problem in the first place and it never would be. But this time, the moment they stepped inside, an employee at the front desk looked up, smiled, and greeted them warmly by name, as if they were old friends walking through the door. Every customer in that lobby, no matter how they were dressed, no matter what kind of car they had parked outside, was treated with the exact same respect and patience. Large posters lined the walls now, clearly listing customer rights for everyone to see, printed in bold letters that no one could miss. Employees proudly pointed newcomers toward a new sign near the entrance announcing the Carter Community Housing Fund, the very project that had almost never happened at all because one woman had judged a man by the dust on his boots instead of the truth in his hands. Noah walked beside his father to the front desk, where a nervous young mother sat waiting to receive the very first housing grant approval under the new fund. Noah, at his father's quiet encouragement, was the one who handed her the folder. The woman's hands shook as she opened it, tears filling her eyes when she saw what was inside. Noah smiled, watching her reaction, and then looked up at his father with a question that had clearly been sitting in his mind for months. "So this is why you didn't destroy the bank?" he asked. Marcus knelt down slightly so he was eye level with his son. "Destroying something is easy," he said quietly. "Building something better, that's what real strength looks like." He placed a steady hand on Noah's shoulder, and together they turned and walked back out toward the parking lot, finally ready to buy that laptop and catch the last innings of the baseball game they had postponed for far too long. But as they reached the truck, Marcus's phone buzzed once in his pocket. He glanced down at the screen and his steps slowed just slightly. It was an email from one of his regional managers, forwarding a customer complaint from a small branch 3 states away, describing something that sounded uncomfortably familiar. Marcus stared at it for a long moment, his jaw tightening, before sliding the phone back into his pocket without a word to Noah. He opened the truck door, helped his son climb inside, and glanced one last time at the bank behind them, now filled with warmth and fairness it hadn't had 6 months earlier. Somewhere out there, it seemed, this exact story was about to begin all over again.